told my man he's passionate. He's a hugger. He doesn't do handshakes. Tyrone's a hugger. I ain't know him yet. He gave me a hug. I'm like, who is this? This is my personal space. But, you know, when we embraced, I felt that love. I felt that passion. And then he stepped back and he said, look, we have this program in Montgomery County called B.O.N.D. And he explained it to me. I came out to the first meeting last year, and there's something about the connection with people that sometimes when you start a conversation, you kind of just feel each other. You know what I'm saying? And we are going to have that conversation here in a little bit. But I want to show you a few things up here. And please engage me, all right, as we go through this. So this is why we're here, outcomes. We want to identify the objectives, analyze some components of data as it relates to B.O.N.'s objectives, establish a mentoring network. I see you guys talking at the table, networking, getting to know one another. That's important. For my first year teachers, either your first year teaching ever or your first year in Montgomery County Public Schools, connect to these older brothers here with the experience. Not just for pedagogy, but for getting to know people, okay? Because you may want to move to another location, you might want to move into leadership, whatever the case may be. I was desperate to bring this young brother right here on. I pulled him from PG County, don't tell anybody that. But when I pulled him on board, I made sure that he was going to be here at Blair. And we talk almost every day. He's been in PG for 4 years. He taught at a school in 4 years. He came here. He graduated from Blair. Blair graduate. He's back home. But coming back as an adult, as a teacher, a little bit different than being a student here. And we have incredible conversations where when we close the door, we make sure there's nobody listening. Because I have to give him the down on what's going on here. The stuff that we can talk about. That's what I want us to do. Even if you were not in this building, we would have that connection. So make those connections today, all right? All right, so what is B.O.N.D? We're about networking, mentoring, professional growth, leadership opportunities. We can expand this list, but for right now, because we're sort of in a reboot mode, we're gonna stay narrow and stay focused, all right? Has anybody ever seen this report? The State of Teacher Diversity. This is the full report here. Has anybody ever heard of it? It comes out of the Albert Schenker Institute. Okay. I'm a research person. I like to look at the numbers. I like to look at patterns to make sense of numbers. When I came on board with B.O.N.D, I asked the question, who are the Black and Latino males in this county? What are they going through? Daryl was about to send out an email, an evite. I said, well, do we even know the needs, the concerns, etc.? And this is way back in August. So I began doing research. And the more research I did, I'm always going to the resources, the citations, where they're getting the information. Much of the information from all these secondhand sources that I read kept pointing back to this document here. So why not go straight and hear from the horse's mouth? Email them, can you guys send me this report? And I combed through it. Let me show you this chart here. This came out last year, 2015. If you contact the institution, they'll send you out a free copy of the report. Take a look at this. Just take a minute to digest this. When I teach my students how to interpret a graph, chart, any kind of information, what's the first thing we look at? The title. All right, so we know what we're looking at. Can anybody tell me what we're looking at here? Does anything stand out? Black folks leaving the profession. Now, it's not black males per se here, but we're talking about African Americans. Now, keep in mind, this study in Washington, D.C., they also analyzed D.C., but they didn't have numbers for D.C. But their numbers are pretty abysmal as well. When you look at this, we're leaving the profession at higher rates than any other group. Why is that? Why do you think it is? I'm asking for a correct answer, but what do you think? Let's try to read between the lines. What's going on here? What do you think may be going on? Talk to me.
A lot of it, I'm from a historically black college. I'm a Hampton grad.
Oh, wait a minute. What?
Another school was there.
You got Howard grad over there, so why not?
You got the real HU.
Right, okay. All right. This is how we do it. Y'all get along.
What was interesting to me, I got a text last week
Right.
in Facebook. Someone put up the story. Our freshman class,
Right.
1,400 students, 72% were female.
Yeah.
And I asked, my son just graduated from Hampton, and I said, Dean, was it? I didn't realize it was that it was that off balance, because when I was there, we were probably 50-50 back in the 70s. Okay. Yes, I went to school in the 70s. So, proud of it and happy to be on the other side almost now. But anyway, I think that for whatever reason, and it's not just at historically black colleges, it's all over the place.
Right.
Black males, even at church, the guys are not participating. Mm-hmm. They are not activated like my generation was. We were very active. We were always, I was talking to a frat brother yesterday. We were, just trying to get folks out to get them motivated. And I don't know how you do it when you look at the news every day and the challenges are there. And so all of us see it.
And I'll tell you what, being a child of the 70s, you're coming off the tail end of the civil rights movement. That energy was still there.
It was there.
I'm Generation X, the first post-civil rights movement. That energy was no longer there. And if you can imagine the millennials, they're even further removed from that. And the kids that are in high school today are no longer millennials. They are something else. They haven't even been defined yet. They are even further removed from it. So there are a lot of moving parts here, right? But that's an important analysis. But let me move on to this next one. So here are the main conclusions from this report. All right, the most significant impediment to increasing the diversity of the teacher workforce is not found in the recruitment and hiring of minority teachers. Nationally, minority teachers are being hired at a higher proportional rate than other teachers. Here's the key. Rather, the problem lies in attrition. Minority teachers are leaving the profession at a higher rate than other teachers, right? And that was the table that we just looked at. So we're being recruited, but we're leaving at higher rates. Two main reasons they cited. The strongest complaints of minority teachers relate to a lack of collective voice in educational decisions and a lack of professional autonomy in the classroom. How many of you filled out the survey that came along with the Evite? Okay, most of those questions were grounded in some of the research that I read. Check this out. Now, we had 50 responses, and this question right here is directly connected to one of those reasons why we leave. How long have you been employed with MCPS public schools? As you can see, we have what? 22%, no, I'm sorry, 28%, 16 years or more, and 26%, 11, 15 years, et cetera. So we've had people that are here. We're not really leaving. Attrition, and Inger, you may be able to correct me on this. I would love to see the numbers. Once we're here, it doesn't seem like we're leaving at the same rates as these other jurisdictions. Doesn't mean there isn't turnover. Doesn't mean there isn't turnover. But many of us are staying. And of course, this is just the tip of the iceberg of, and I think we have, what, 12,000 teachers in the county?
13,000.
About how many black males?
13,000. Teachers, I think it was about 300, 1,400 African-American males.
Out of 13,000 teachers?
In general.
Right.
But don't
Okay.
quote me on that. I have to go
Okay,
back and look at
but
material.
ballpark.
321 emails that I sent out. 321 names. I think it was about 18 Latino males.
And even less than Latino.
350 for Hispanic.
But
Think
the
of-
Latino males, that was just for this hiring class.
Okay, all right. And think about our demographic shift. We're all familiar with the demographic shift. About 4 years ago, we became a majority-minority district, okay? The numbers don't add up, all right? So it seems like we're staying, all right? So the attrition is not too much of an issue, not saying it's not an issue. Here, teachers have actual influence on school policy where I teach. Most of us seem to believe that we do have an influence on policy or decisions being made in our school. All right, that's a good sign. So the two main reasons that report cited may not necessarily apply to things going on in MCPS, even though there are some issues. So is there a need for us to still get together and do what we need to do? I'm seeing a lot of nods in the affirmative, okay? Which is important, because I think it's important as well. These are just some other stats that you guys answered. Teachers at my school have professional autonomy in the classroom, which I think is important. Most of us feel that we do, those of us that have been teaching for a while. Generally, I am satisfied with being a teacher in MCPS. Most of us that answered the survey seem to be satisfied for the most part. But there are still some things that are happening, and we still need a program like this. Why do we need a program like this? If we seem to be satisfied with MCPS, it's not a utopia. No institution is. No institution is. What's the reason we need a program like this? Why are y'all here?
For diversity, having a voice. Things change over a period of, sorry, Jamal Jeter, White Oak Middle School. Things change over a period of time.
Right.
We have people making decisions every day. These decisions change, time passes, and if our voice isn't incorporated in those decisions, then things come back to get everyone here and all the students, and it impacts our students. So there needs to be a voice there. There needs to be diversity, and it's not just our voice, it's everyone's voice needs to be heard.
Okay. Thanks, Jamal. And Inga spoke to that, and she sees things from a different perspective than we do. She has a bird's eye view on what's going on. Desmond?
Yeah, Desmond McCall. I'm from Wingate Elementary Schools.
Okay.
Staff development teacher. For me, when I came here in 2000, and one of the things that I realized as a younger teacher at the time is that I didn't have especially in Bethesda, I didn't have someone that I could go to and say, well, how do you, if you want to be a, I don't know, whatever, fill in the blank. I didn't really have that. And I remember I was at a training, and a brother that I was actually talking to about the bond came up to me, and I didn't know he was a principal, and he literally sat me down that day, we were late going back to our session, and actually explained things to me. And when I found out about, the meeting with him, so I invited him to come, and he came through.
Okay.
So for me, it's about making sure that I'm reaching back to the newer brothers that come in and be able to do some of the same things for them. Because now that I'm a little more knowledgeable, we can kind of help each other in terms of moving forward in whatever capacity that.
Whatever capacity
Yeah.
would need it. Anybody else want to ask this? Why are you here? And that's one of the open-ended questions I asked. And you guys wrote some remarkable things. Dave, go
I
ahead.
mean, these results are good, but why not move that 61% to 100% in terms of being generally satisfied?
Say it again.
Why be satisfied with 61% being satisfied with a job? Why not move towards 100?
All right. And what would it take for us to move towards that? And I think having a voice, knowing that we matter, that we are celebrated the way that we should be, would make a difference. That's part of the reason why we are here. Any questions, comments, concerns? Stop me now. Okay, go ahead. Mike?
I just want to add, Mike, I just want to add one other thing that's tied to what folks are saying. It was mentioned that there's just 300 of us.
Yeah.
And yet you mentioned that what we all know, that this county is changing in terms of complexion. And I think a big part of us should be, how do we get more black males in the classrooms or in the schools in order to be that reflection for our students.
All right.
So that's what I'm seeing as a big need.
Thank you. Can I say Michael Williams, Montgomery County Teacher of the Year? He's an RT at Kennedy High School, and my intern last year, who was phenomenal, Indian woman, but she is phenomenal, tried to get her here, but I knew Mike is trying to build that program. We connected. I was like, Neha, you got to go and work with this brother here to help him build that program. The network. That's how it happened. We're still fighting for him, man. But I wouldn't let this one go. All right, let's move on. All right, again, so this one. Professional development designed specifically to address the challenges of male teachers of color is necessary. Again, most of us felt, yes, this is necessary. Right? And this speaks to exactly what B.O.N.D is about. All right, don't worry about this. All right, so why do we need B.O.N.D? You can't see this, but this comes out of, and I wish Damien were here to tell us where he got this from. The teacher
It's
workforce.
Strategic plan.
Street-
It's the Montgomery County Public Schools Strategic Plan on Teacher Workforce Diversity. And there are 4 components of it. It's retention, it is recruitment, retention, the talent continuum, how we build our talent. And the focus of this started back in 2014 because we were looking for ways to do things a little differently. There were several of us who presented to the Board of Education at that time and talked about the need for diversity. So at that time, you know, we were already behind the scenes doing things with B.O.N D, but the school system was now interested in creating a more definitive plan. And I see Chris Barkley, our former Board of Education president and vice president and member, nodding his head saying, yeah, you know what, that is where we were. So now we're doing even more to try to really build our teacher workforce diversity in a different way. So,
All right.
stepping back in the shadows.
Thank you. So this comes out of the Diversity Strategic Plan, Objective 1.3, and then we have this one right here, 3.2, which speaks directly to what B.O.N.D is. Enhance formal mentoring and expand networking programs that offer support networks within schools and across the school district for all new teachers, and especially those with backgrounds and experiences that are underrepresented in the MCPS teacher workforce, including teachers of color. They can put equals B.O.N.D. All right? We're moving this ball forward, okay? Now, so why do we need B.O.N.D? Going back to what Daryl said in the beginning. For our kids, we want to improve student performance. We want to help close the achievement gap. But here's the next one. We also want to dismantle the opportunity gap. And I think that we have tools, we have skill sets where we can help this happen. Culture, increase diversity in the MCPS workforce, implement and normalize our cultures within the system. I don't think anybody can speak to our cultures, what they are, than us, okay? And then finally, develop our craft. We want to continue to develop strong mentoring networks. We want to provide professional learning opportunities and enhance our pedagogy and cultivate leadership development for members. So when we talk about B.O.N.D, we want to think about kids, culture, our craft, and what that means. Tonight's the first step, at least in this year. Does that make sense? Any questions, any comments, any concerns before we move forward? And I'll rush through this because I want to make sure we get to the next phase. Okay, yes, sir.
George Mitchell from Rosa Parks Middle School.
Okay.
And I think when we talk about having a voice and
Yep.
having some influence over our classrooms and things that are happening to us, we have to keep in mind the union. Because the union, even if it's not the strongest union in the world, it is a force and an equal member at the table, the other unions. And so participation in the union is highly advised. And, I was EFR in my school,
Okay.
and I've been a building rep, and I just think it's really important. I spoke to a retired teacher the other day from North Carolina.
Right.
There are these right-to-work states,
Yeah.
no unions. And I think that explains part of those numbers up there, because I know what it's like to feel helpless. And thank God the union was available.
Is that George?
George.
George, I think what's important in what you're saying, and I want you to think about this, when we start to talk about developing workshops, you know, by us, for us kind of thing, that's the kind of information we need. Should we join the union? Not join it, but should we become leaders within the union? What does it mean? How do we navigate that process? And this is information I think would be important to share with the rest of us. So I'll be calling you. I'll say so be ready for that. Because teacher leadership is important, and we need to build our capacity to do that.